Welkom bij de Leiderschapspodcast van City Life Church. Dit is Leadership Talks.
Hallo allemaal, welkom bij episode nummer 18 van Leadership Talks. Elke vierde dinsdag van de maand zit ik met een gast hier te praten over leiderschap. En van allerlei kanten. En vandaag hebben we ook een hele interessante gast, denk ik. Hij gaat ons wat meer vertellen over servant leadership bijvoorbeeld. We gaan het in Engels doen, want hij komt uit Noord-Korea, maar woont nu inmiddels alweer heel lang in Manchester. Dat klopt toch, in het Verenigd Koninkrijk. Welkom, Timothy Cho.
Thank you for having me.
Now, before we jump into leadership and the role that you have now in the UK, you are from North Korea. We hear North Korea is a very difficult country. Just a few minutes on if we say North Korea.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned about leadership, and whether servant leadership or leadership. As you can see, North Korea, the leaders abandoned their primary responsibility to protect and their own people from starvation and oppression and persecution. That's a very significant part of that leadership. But when I was in North Korea, I was brainwashed that North Korea was the best country and best leaders. And I really thought they were my God. When first Kim died in 1994, I thought we were all going to die because in my understanding, he was real God and leader, my grandfather. And I asked my father, are we all going to die because of his death? And my father said, no, we are now going to follow our dear leader, his second Kim, which is his son. And there was no way of process of thinking which could be right or which could be wrong. Yeah. So you can imagine that picture of just someone is born in a prison cell. And you haven't seen anything from the darkest atmosphere.
Yeah. Wow. But you told me that Kim, he sees himself as a god.
That's right. He is a god in North Korea.
In North Korea. Yeah. And so they have a lot of statues, you told me?
Oh, there are between 30, 50,000 statues. You probably haven't seen anything on the media about how North Korean people are suffering and persecuted. But you probably seen many times on the media show the Kim family big statue. Yeah. That big statue actually is built upon church site. It used to be church underneath the statue. Oh, wow. So it is not coincidence something is happening there. Over 73 years, darkest and oppression and persecution is continue going on there. Yeah. It reminds me often biblical stories, and one of them is Babylon, the story how many years were in the darkness.
Wow, people have to bow for the statue?
You have to, yes. Yeah. And every single house in North Korea, they have a Kim family's picture frame. Oh. Every single house, school, factories, companies, everywhere. Yeah. But if it's in individual's house, you have a Kim family's picture frame, but somehow you didn't clean well, dust is stuck on that picture frame, then you have to end up in a re-education camp for, depends on how many years, 2 years, 3 years, or 6 years. Oh. And here we can throw a newspaper that have a Dutch Queen or Dutch Prime Minister or UK Prime Minister. It's fine, we throw into the bin. Yeah. But in North Korea, if you do throw the Kim's face into bin, you end up in a prison camp. That's politically then now corrected. Yeah. And religious, absolutely, that is what North Korea is God, and politically the set system. You cannot think of how they do these things between politics and religion in North Korea. It's systematic persecution in this country.
It's heavy.
Very much, yeah.
Now you live in the UK.
Yes.
And tell us a little bit what you do for work now.
So I'm very proud today that I don't hesitate to share about my Christian faith with whether they are Christian friends or non-Christian friends. And so I actually work after I studied in politics. I have 2 political degrees in the UK, and I was able to get opportunity to work inside the UK Parliament, and we're learning about how democratic functions and constitutional values for freedom of religion, speech, expression that works. And now I work with all-party parliamentary group on North Korea. From cross-party MPs, many are Christians. So we work on persecution issues as well as crimes against humanity in North Korea, what is happening. When there is persecution happens, same as human rights issues, all included there actually. So I work this role as a Christian, also born in North Korea, and also past 13 years of my life, particularly since I escaped from North Korea, I have been able to find out the beauty in humanity. That who has shown this? It's Jesus. He was a man of God. He has shown the most beautiful things. The man also was most persecuted than anyone else in our history. But he still has shown his compassionate love. He did not reject it. He did not discriminate it, whether that was a woman, homeless, prostitution, and illness. So that is somehow we may or could be easily can talk about. He could be one of our best leaders, Not like North Korean dear leaders.
Yeah. Tell us a little bit about servant leadership, because you have a training program. Tell us a bit more about how that works.
And it was very fortunate, and I am grateful that I had the servant leadership program training during my work at the UK Parliament. And it was every Friday we gathered 11 people, and all of them we worked for a member of Parliament. But Friday afternoon we were holding there together and talk about political, social, and all the issues upon biblical understanding. So we put our Bible on the table.
They were all Christians.
Yes, we were all Christians.
Yeah.
And we put our Bible on the table and certain subject and depends on what's going on, the most controversial things daily on in politics and countries. And so this influence was about what is about servant leadership. What do you mean by leadership means and influence? But our understanding and that perspective of leadership, everyone needs to have leadership influence because we all have to make our own decision process. Particularly in this way, then how we can be servant leadership? If you are a Christian, you're a leader of group, country, or certain groups, organizations, but you serve your team. And within your Christian perspective, your team could be, there are non-Christians as well. But you show them with your compassionate and encourage them, pray for them, strategically giving them ideas how to break through things, but you always pray for them from behind. And so daily work start, put your hand on the Bible. And if you work, however, as a just normal person, but you have an understanding of servant leadership influence, but you work for someone is not a Christian. In that perspective, we learn that it can be fragrance of Jesus. It doesn't have to sometimes we have to tell them, oh, you have to believe God. Because maybe some people who are not people in faith, they may run away. But we show them who we are without expressing directly, but indirectly. So in there, in my understanding, my point of view in servant leadership perspective, it can be a family man. Sometimes your family members are not Christians as well. So you have to lead them family into right direction, right way. Of course, there can be many issues as well. Or within your brothers and sisters, or within your friendship as well. Or you are leading group, or you are work for someone. So it is about actually how to serve that person, friends, and people in your group, because they are God's people. We are. That's our identity comes from God, who we have been created by. And that's what Jesus has shown how to be servant leaders. And I am always amazed when we talk about it. Of course, I'm not a leader today, but I always believe myself. Also, we are in servant leadership influence, how to influence for someone whose life can be in a better way. Because having God and Jesus in our heart, the cross, it firms our life and between left and right, but we know where our direction is and what we are heading for, what values we are standing for upon.
As I listen to you, I realize you come from North Korea.
Yes.
we are now talking about servant leadership, but Kim and the whole family is completely the opposite. Now you're talking like, well, you're from the UK and you're in the business of, even working with the parliament, but you come from far. How can you, that process from coming from under King, Kim, and now what you do now, was that a difficult journey? Because it's opposite, the servant leadership and what you were exposed to as a child and a teenager.
If you met me maybe about 13, 14 years ago, I don't know whether I would be able to elaborate these words today. You could hear from me. Yeah. And it's been very, very persevering journey. Yeah. And I could tell you that I even tried to commit suicide, during my imprisonment because I didn't want to be sent back to North Korea, killed by North Korean regime. And then, since I have arrived in a democratic free society, given opportunity to choose, and even go to school from that point, because I always missed to go to school in North Korea. I couldn't after my parents escaped, because the society called me a son of betrayal. They have a classification system. It's very similar to apartheid system in South Africa, how they discriminated because of different color of people in South Africa. North Korea is discriminate people because of different classified categories. Like myself, when my parents escaped, I have no opportunity. I was not even allowed joining military. I was not even allowed joining a political party. Today I can say I'm a member of a political party. I chose. I could choose. It's an option to choose. So coming through this way of journey, I didn't know who I was, what I could, what opportunity, hope and dream. But what breakthrough has been happening, the frozen heart, melting down process, I have to say the cross, Jesus, having him in my heart, has made me a completely different person today. And also even understanding of reconciliation myself. It makes me upset when I was particularly learning about servant leadership in North Korea. When you look at it, there's no at all servant leadership. And millions of people died of starvation in the 1990s. 3 million people died of starvation. When the collapse of communism was happening, countries opening doors because they had when you have no trade with other countries, inevitable by itself you try to feed millions of people. It has to interact. That's from beginning of our relationship with God, created man and woman interact, and country to country, group to group. But North Korea doesn't. Within the isolation, only feed their own leaders. They don't care people die of starvation on the streets. As myself also survived on the street. It made me really upset when I was learning about servant leadership. And I pray a lot because of that, that upset particularly. And I pray for North Korean leaders. I ask you, God, to penetrate His love, making fire into these leaders' heart, their bloodline, how they can feel, how much they feel, pressured because they abandoned their own people. It is the servant leadership is training of following Jesus, the path, how Jesus has looked after His brothers and sisters, and group to group, nation to nation. And I am humbled and I am grateful. It feels to me that I also live in a dream sometimes. I cannot feel it sometimes real. I have to pinch myself.
So you come from a very dark background if we talk about leadership. Now you have a revelation of the best leader ever lived, Jesus. He is the perfect, the
I would
best.
say amen to it.
If I ask you, coming from where you come from, what makes Jesus such a great leader? This is a leadership talk.
Yes.
From where you come from, what is the things that you say, that's why he is my perfect leader in life?
And he makes me love one another and care for one another. I still stop by homeless people on the street. And I want to give them my clothes, actually. I don't give them money. I buy food for them. But sometimes I really desire, I want to even take off my jacket for them. And I could have not done it before. But accept the love. I had a lot of hatred, even until recently. And that hatred melted down what we call love. And that love goes into, when you look at someone, and that someone else hold pain in their eyes to show me, and that reminds me, my pain, where I come from, the darkest and lowest background of my life. So, first process was accept. It was not easy to accept Jesus completely in my heart. Why do I have to pray for my enemy? Why do I have to love my enemy? He persecuted me, he beat me, I still have torture scars. But having that hatred in my heart, it's been very dark. I couldn't smile in front of someone. I always have to have a kind of depression feeling, kind of loneliness myself. But since having Jesus in my heart, I can have a proper smile. And I forgave a number of people who I used to hate. Because of holding the hatred, it gave me dark life. It's a worthwhile challenge. I know it's not easy. And also, one time you say, I forgive you, but it doesn't work. You keep having the challenge. And I still cry out to God, why you want me to forgive this person? He does some evil kind of things. But if you carry that darkness, your life, not able to see the beauty of humanity, what God has created for us. There are plenty of things, many beautiful things in this world, because it's God's creation. So that part, when I think Jesus is a perfect leader for me, is it stops me in front of someone who is in vulnerable circumstances. Woman, man, child, homeless. And when I hearing persecution, and when I heard a friend who've been abused since they were young, or when I see that people grew up with single parents, they don't even know what their love is about actually. Another persecution is very severe in my home country where I come from. But even Western societies, when I look at it myself, there are many challenges my age young people group or people are growing up children, they're going through at the moment. We need love. That love can change us, make us different personality, and the most important, we see different life of the beauty where it is. And that shows your kindness, compassionate, gentle and beautiful smile. But we are also a human being, can be reacted to certain things. But then God comes to tell you again and again.
Can I ask you, you have been in prison 4 times, you have been tortured, you have a very dark background, and now you are talking about forgiveness. What would you say to people who find it very hard to forgive? You have had a very, hard life, but there's many people that have gone through difficult circumstances or misuse or kind of, and even the word forgiveness would make them very upset. Like, really? I think your whole life is a message of forgiveness. So in the closing minutes, what would you say to somebody? You can say this because you've gone through this. What would you say to somebody who knows in their head they have to forgive, but their heart screams, no, I'm never gonna. What would you say?
You have to fight yourself as well. And I am, having said, I have declared a number of times I forgive that certain people who even tortured me, who oppressed me, who put me in that prison system. And that doesn't mean 10 times I declared I forgive, it means completely forgiven. It is an ongoing process. You keep having to challenge it. Just think one thing. What is worthwhile, you think? Whether you are a more valuable person than that person, or you want to have a very worthwhile life. Your life, it's your life is for you, you make that process because it makes you feel light.
It's for you.
Not
For
heavy,
yourself.
heavy heart. It's for yourself. It's not for that person.
That's right.
But it has to be continue also challenging process. Have interaction with God. And if you want to cry out, cry out. If you want to scream out, which I do. I still complain to God.
Did you ask why, God? Why, if you exist, if you are love, why? Of course you did, I guess.
I did, I still do. Probably more than thousands of times I asked him why.
Yeah.
But God, in God's world, there is so much more than what we think. Sometimes we don't have to try to understand. Just to accept, just to follow, because we were created by Him. The world beyond what God is thinking, there is hope and future and joy.
So probably the why question will not be answered in this life, I think.
Maybe it's maybe not completely answered, but it's for you. We are given value, being loved, deserved. That's what God has given us. So if we want to have that category, what God has given us for our life, it is when we talk about forgiveness also that in that process for you, not for that person. For myself, I want to have a worthwhile life, being loved.
Well, thank you, Timothy. Time goes fast. It's a privilege to talk to you with all that you've gone through. And look at you now. You're married. You have a daughter. God has been good to you. Interesting detail. There's no time anymore. But you met God in the prison because your other prisoner, he was from the mafia, a gangster, but he had a Bible with him. That's right. And that's where your journey started. How do you discover God in such a difficult country? So that's it's an interesting story you told me. But thank you for being with us. And thank you for sharing so openly. We highly appreciate that. I'm sure you will be a big blessing with everything that you've shared with us. Hey, ik hoop dat je genoten is een gek woord, aangeraakt bent, net als ik, door deze sessie. Iemand uit zo'n donker land die zo'n reis heeft meegemaakt, 4 keer gevangen is geweest. En hier nu praat over vergeving, hoe belangrijk het is voor jezelf en leiderschap. En dat je ook aan God mag vragen waarom. En dat God niet altijd antwoord geeft, maar dat er iets gebeurt van binnen in je relatie met hem. Waar je eigenlijk alleen maar door groeit en sterker wordt. Het was een speciale episode deze keer van Leadership Talks. Wij doen dit elke maand, elke 4e dinsdag van de maand. En als je dit inspirerend vindt, deel het met anderen, like ons en abonneer. Geef het door. Ik zie je graag ook weer over een maand terug voor de volgende episode. Tot dan.